Whether you are a small indie developer or big AAA studio, there's a big chance that working on a game feels like this. And if you watched our previous episode, you know that's because, well, developers go into production kinda like this.
I have a plan.
You've got a plan.
Yes.
What percentage?
I don't know. 12%.
12%? That is not a plan.
It's barely a concept.
I believe there's a better way, and in this video series, I want to show you how. Hi, I'm Matt Binkowski, welcome to Game Jitsu, and today we're gonna be talking about pre-production. You know, for a long time, I was thinking that the goal of pre-production is to build vertical slice, or a benchmark that allows you, your team, your publisher, or any other stakeholder to look at the game and say, all right, so the rest of the game will look like this, the rest of the game will sound like this, and what's really important, the rest of the game will play like this. But that's not exactly true. And perhaps that's one of the reasons why so many teams end up in trouble. You see, the benchmark is not the goal of pre-production. It's just a tool. It's just one thing that we deliver to complete a much bigger task. Sure, it's a big task, it's a lot of effort, and it gets a lot of attention. But nonetheless, it's just one thing that we use to complete a bigger task. And that objective, the main goal of pre-production, is to prepare production.
Aha! Aha!
But in order to prepare for the whole production, you have to look at the bigger picture. You have to take into consideration the whole scope of your game, and that's way more material than what you have in your benchmark. So you have to look at all the content that you want to build, and then talk with your team and discuss all the things that you still don't know that could stop them from executing efficiently. And if you look at your content that you have to build, you're going to have so many questions about your levels, about your enemies, weapons, and whatnot. And not only about the content itself, but also about how are we going to build this. And as you go through that process, you might find that there's actually plenty of stuff to design, prototype, test. Maybe you will need to research some additional tech. Maybe you will need to build some tools. Maybe you need to hire some people with specific skills. Or maybe you need to organize some logistics with third-party partners. You know, there's a lot of stuff to cover. Additional QA, art outsourcing, mocap sessions recording, casting actors and recording voiceovers, localization, and so on and so on. You know, and it's a bit funny because when I'm counting down those things, it sounds so simple, right? It's like bum, 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 easy peasy. But in reality, this is a massive effort that involves a big group of people. You know, we could probably make a separate episode for each one of these. And it takes really good communication. If you're working on a big game, you probably have a dedicated producer for each one of these. And then on top of that, if you need to build some extraordinary tech or tools, which is actually pretty common if you're trying to innovate, it really gets difficult and scary. Because you're actually trying to make something that you've never did before, you have no idea how much time it's going to take, or if you can even make it. And many people don't realize that, but that makes making video games such a risky business.
Everything burns.
So you really have to make sure that you have enough time to experiment, and you have to be prepared to fail, and fail quickly so that you still have enough time to pivot if necessary. Now, I'm not going to go into details about how to do a producer's job on a daily basis. While I feel pretty comfortable with understanding the video game production process, I'm not a producer. So if you are a producer or someone who wants to learn more about how to manage your project in detail, like a pro, I suggest you watch this guy.
First of all, we're going to try to plot a trajectory, which means we're going to try to locate the exit. What is it that we want to reach? If you do that, it will allow you to tackle down your core and your sensitive systems first, and also to be incremental. So the first milestone should always be your most threatening aspect. So you get your prioritized threats list, and that's your first milestone.
I was extremely lucky to be able to work with Stefan for a while. And seriously, guys, this guy is the best producer I had ever chance to work with. You can find links to his lectures in the description below. All right, so we talked about the big picture. Now let's talk about the benchmark. Why do we need that benchmark in the first place? You know, up to this point, your game is basically concept art and prototypes. So we want to establish what release quality means for us, and in all aspects of it. So gameplay, art, UI, you name it. And you know, the thing about quality is that it's really easy to fall into a trap of trying to improve quality forever. And I get it, I'm guilty of it myself. We're all creators and we care deeply for our craft, so whenever we do something, we want to make the best of it. But since we're making video games as a business, we'll have to ship the game eventually. So it's very important to establish a quality level where we take a look at the game and we can say, all right, this is the quality level that satisfies our ambitions, but also this is a quality level that realizes our business objectives. And then you need to stick to it, which is hard, but you have to be responsible. If at this point you ask yourself, wait a minute, we never talked about business objectives before. What's that? And what the hell it has to do with the quality of our game?
Excellent, 10 points to Gryffindor.
Keep that question in mind, we're gonna get back to it later. Back to the benchmark. The other reason we need it is because we need to prove to ourselves and to any other stakeholders that we can actually build it. At this point, it's no longer about making things appear like they work. By the end of pre-production, the core elements of your game must work. And as you go building that benchmark and proving that stuff actually works, you measure how much time it takes to take something from an idea to release quality. And it's super important that you do this because this is actually the only way to really know how much time and money you're going to need for the whole production. If you don't do this, all you have is just guesses and wishful thinking. And we already know where that leads.
That's okay. Things are gonna be okay.
Finally, the benchmark is also about proving that your core gameplay loop works and that it's exciting to play. Think about it as having a minimal viable piece of your game that demonstrates the intended experience. And here's a very, very important thing. If you build that part of your benchmark and your game doesn't deliver the experience, if it doesn't evoke the emotions and behaviors you intended, if it's not exciting to play, do not move to the next stage, ever. Making things more beautiful doesn't fix boring gameplay, period. And if your reaction is to, hey, let's add more stuff, we need more features, stop.
Do you understand?
Stop and think. Analyze your game. Think about the dynamic that you have. Think about the dynamic that you intended. Look in details into the mechanics that you already have and find the problems first. And only if you understand why your game plays the way it plays, then start fixing it. Actually, now that I think about this, the whole thing of analyzing your game, looking at the mechanics and the dynamics that they create, is actually so big that we could create another episode just about that. Let me know if that's something you want to see. Okay, so we covered the big picture, we talked about the benchmark, but there's one more thing that we need to take care of in pre-production. If you intend to sell your game, there's a pretty big chance that you're going to do some marketing around it. If part of your marketing strategy is to take the game to events and let the players play your game before its release, this is the time to plan your demos. Look, this is really stupid. Every year, our industry has the same events. GDC, E3, Gamescom, PAX, EGX, TGS, and they all happen at pretty much the same time and place every single year. And yet every year, developers are caught with their pants down when it comes to delivering demos. And it's like, marketing hates developers and developers hate marketing. Marketing hates developers because when they go and ask for a demo, the developer says, "Oh, I'm a developer. I'm so busy. I don't have time. You want me to make a game or make you a demo, huh?" And developers hate marketing people because they're busy making a game and then marketing shows up and says, "Oh, look at me. I'm Mr. Marketing. I'm so important. But I woke up yesterday and I need a demo now." Come on, guys.
Get your shit together.
You're playing in the same team. Developers try to make the game, marketing tries to sell it. You both need each other. You need to help each other. So talk about your marketing strategy early and make sure you put those demos in your production plan before you go into production. Okay, so I hope that by now you realize why going into production too early is such a terrible idea. Look, it's really simple. You can't run away from your problems. You're going to face them anyway. There's really no way around it. In order to build content efficiently, your team is going to need answers. They're going to need tools. They're going to need that tech developed. So the only thing you're getting by going into production too early is frustrated team and lots of wasted content that most likely will have to be rebuilt anyway. And you know, sometimes teams go into pre-production too early because they don't know any better. They simply lack knowledge and experience. They don't know that they need to take care of something. But there is another reason why studios rush into production. And it goes kind of like this. All hands on deck. Everybody is trying to frantically finish the game, and it's chaos and fires are burning everywhere. Finally, after months or even years of crunch, the game is delivered. Yay! Everybody's celebrating. And then you start to think about your next game. So you set up a small team and you let them work on the new game. But very soon, you realize that you have this big team and they have nothing to do. So what do? Well, you dump the big team on top of the small team, making life miserable for everybody. And of course you might say, well, it's not that simple. We have that big team and what the hell we're supposed to do with it? We can't just let people sit and do nothing. And that's right. But the only reason why you have this problem is because you are only thinking one step ahead. You see, you need to start thinking about your next game much earlier. Because going through conception phase and then pre-production for the next thing is going to take a long time. But in order to be able to do that, you need to have a well-organized production. So instead of putting out fires all the time, you can take a group of people and let them start working on the next big game early. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. It's not. It's actually quite difficult and it takes a lot of thinking ahead. What I'm trying to say is that it is a problem that can be mitigated, but it's not going to solve itself. You know, problems don't solve themselves. So you need to have someone dedicated to fixing that problem. So here you go, pre-production explained. It's not easy, it's a lot of work. This is the hard part, but if you do it right, you can significantly reduce the risk and raise confidence in your team and your project. There's only one more problem. How do you know which part of your game to benchmark? And how do you get a grasp on the full scope of your game? How do you know which elements of your game are critical for the player experience? What is the intended player experience? And which elements of your game are essential for the player fantasy? And what is the player fantasy? How do you know if your gameplay serves the right audience motivations? Who is your audience? And what about those business objectives? And why are they so important? Well, that's more like 10 problems. And I hope you guessed it, you need to take care of them before you go into pre-production. That's why we have conception phase, and that's going to be the topic of our next episode. I hope to see you there.